Hotel history is created for adult audiences. Content may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised. You're listening to Hotel History. We take you with us through the sordid history and scandals of some of the world's most famous and infamous hotels. I'm Dieta.
And I'm Yael. Let's get started.
Welcome to part 2 of our dive into the hotels of the Catskills, aka the Borscht Belt, the Sour Cream Sierras, the Jewish Alps, and even Disneyland with Knishes. We're interviewing Jen Stewart from the Borscht Belt Tattler, a podcast completely dedicated to this period in history.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the sports because that's an area that I think is really interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
It was known as a sports mecca.
It really
like-
was. Just sports and recreation in the Catskills basically goes back almost as long as they they started kind of blowing up in the heyday.
I think it's really interesting that because Jews don't really play sports well, like professionally. We love sports, not me, but the general population. And I think there's something that they wanted to be a part of it so bad. Like, so the Jewish people will buy a team, but that's because we can't play on the team. Like, it's too short and not athletic.
Buy a team. It's really interesting. So that we talk about this training ground for comedy, and there was this training ground for sports too. So from like the 1930s all the way to the 2000s, during the off seasons, basically the best basketball player, so basketball, which was one of the sports, they would come to the Catskills to showcase their skills. It was a place for, these kids would come by day, they would work as a busboy or in the dining room, and then they would play. Each of the hotels had their own, like many of the hotels, the major ones anyways, had their own basketball teams, and they would play on the teams in the evening, basically. That was a really big thing.
Yeah, I was surprised how much boxing training went on there.
Yeah, so boxing was also like a huge, it was definitely a huge sport in the Catskills. Many of the hotels had their own trained boxing rings, and many of the major pros would train there for the bigger fights in the city. So
Wow.
yeah,
the boxing was surprising. Basketball, not as surprising, but it says here legendary Boston am I saying this right?
Celtics.
Mm-hmm. Celtics, yeah.
How not sports I am. Red Auerbach.
Yeah, Red Auerbach.
I said it right. Wow. So he's a coach, and he was there.
Yeah, so he was a coach. He was one of the first NBA coaches. He's basically who made the Celtics what they are today. He made that team. And he was hired as an athletic, like a member of the athletic staff for pitchers back in the day. And he trained many of the basketball players who I was about to say performed. who played at many of the hotel games in the Catskills. So
that's cool to, like, as a kid, watch that happening before your eyes. You're like, I'm gonna go out and see what's up.
They didn't know, but like I think in the moment, like they didn't even know that like I think in the moment they didn't realize what was happening. Like I think because I think of these games that happened with these professional players, at midnight, but it was just a bunch of kids they weren't who they were. Back then they were just a bunch of kids trying to play their sport, get better, and get recruited for the NBA.
Well, it worked.
So,
see, damn.
Yeah.
We got to make like there's the 6 degrees of separation with people. And it's the 6 degrees of separation with the Borscht Belt.
No, it's 100%. Or
Like
or Kevin Bacon. What's the one with Kevin Bacon? Or
well, I think what happened was, I think the saying is there's 6 degrees of separation with people, and then I think it's from Will and Grace where they did the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. I don't know which
so.
one came
I don't
first.
know.
I always said in the Jewish world there's only 2 degrees of separation with every single Jew.
No, we really are very connected. What really set, but just to get back to the boxing, like some of the best prize fighters in the world trained in the boxing gyms, especially at Kutcher's. So Ezra Charles, Leon Spinks, even Muhammad Ali, when he was Cassius Clay, before he was Muhammad Ali, trained in the Catskills. And you could just hang out with them ringside. That's the craziest part of it, is you could go and watch these people play and then hang out with them.
Yeah,
that's so cool. Well, and I was reading
no security, no PR people, nobody getting in the way saying, "Oh, you're too close, mister." You could just go and be with people.
Yeah. Well, and then Grossinger's kind of was having a difficult time during the Depression, and it was the fact that Barney Ross came to train there that kind of helped get the word out that that's where he was training, and it kind of increased their popularity and helped them make it through those difficult Depression years, because Jennie Grossinger invited him because he was Orthodox, and so he had a hard time finding a place to train where he could get kosher food and have a rabbi and all of that. So she invited him and was like, I've got that covered, like, come train here. And so it kind of came to be known that that's where he was training.
Yeah, Barney Ross was a staple at Grossinger's.
Was he Orthodox his whole life, or just in the beginning? I don't know anything.
I don't know if he went to the trouble to do it while he was a professional boxer, then probably. I don't know.
So this is an interesting thing. I thought growing up that the hotels, no one was religious, but they were like so totally secular places.
Well, it's interesting. Like a lot of them were. So this is the thing that's really confusing to me, is that what did being a religious Jew look like in the 30s and 40s? Did it look the same way that it does now?
No.
We have the rules, the book, the rules, the things that we don't do. But like, I'm very curious to know what it actually looked like in America, because now we have like conservative, reform, Orthodox, from Reconstructionist, spiritual, humanistic. Like there's so many different ways to be a Jew. I'm curious to know what
You're right. I think that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what happened was that, especially before the war, it was traditional. Jews were very traditional, not necessarily Orthodox. I think there were some really, like, from the shtetl who were Orthodox, but they were like the minority and kind of extreme. That didn't mean that you weren't religious. You were just like not them. And then after the war, people came, and that's really when things changed, because people were like, fuck this, I don't want to be religious anymore. I don't want to, deal with the discrimination. And then the opposite, people are like, no, I really want to attach myself to this. And it kind of morphed in its own thing. Like by the time I grew up, I mean, the rules were so like, you're modern Orthodox and you're really Orthodox, and then you're conservadox, and then you're.
It's so confusing,
like,
man.
It was so tiny.
It's so confused. Like it's very confusing.
It is very confusing
these days. But one of my all-time favorite stories about sort of this, moving to a more secular way was at Grossinger's, and because they were very observant, but they wanted to bring in entertainment on the weekends. And so one of my favorite stories is they sold the hotel for a day over Shabbos every week. In order to bypass, because Jennie was like advised by some rabbinic advisor that this is the way to get through.
This is the Eruv.
The loophole, just sell the hotel to one of your non-Jewish staff members for as long as Shabbos, and then get it back.
That's like selling your chametz on Pesach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Like you sell it to the rabbi's
my favorite
friend
story,
for a
though.
penny. That's so funny. Oh, so maybe that, yeah. Huh. I also realized something, and I don't know if you agree or whatever, but the downfall of the Borscht Belt is that you had Jews who, go other places. They can travel. They're not discriminated against. They have more money and all that stuff. But you still have, yeah.
Oh, no. I was just gonna say, you remember that thing you said at the beginning? It's like 2 Jews, 3 opinions, or right? Everybody has an opinion on this, on what the downfall was.
I mean, I think it makes sense. I think also moving out of New York and like expanding and I don't think it necessarily was only the Borscht Belt that got affected. I think life and technology and everything changed, and
it wasn't cool. It's not cool to vacation with your parents. It wasn't. And
it's not just that. It's that they're not constricted by religion anymore. Well, if you go today at the Catskills, you have so many Orthodox bungalow colonies. And the reason is because most Orthodox Jews can't just get up and go to like Jamaica. They would have to be like, is there Chabad? What's the kosher food? What's Shabbat like? And so what they did was that they just brought their little communities in the bungalow colony. So it's easy. I can go on vacation and not really have to worry about this stuff. I can be secluded, and still very Jewish. And so they still have that pull. That's why you'll see them there. That's why they're booming, and why they bought up all the old bungalows and hotels. Like the hotel my grandparents owned is now a yeshiva. But I don't think that secular Jews or non-Orthodox Jews have the same pull, because they're like, I don't need a kosher place. I just won't eat, the pork. And
we're more, I think the people who are secular, who are drawn to it, are certainly people who are nostalgic for sure, and who are curious about it. But I think it's also just, it's a beautiful place. So regardless of, I don't know, I think a lot of things, I think things go in circles.
It's not going to be as strong. Like you don't need to have everything there in every single bungalow and all your family. Like it's a different pull.
It's a different vibe now.
Yeah.
Like it's very different, and it's not going to be the same. It's going to be what it's going to be. Like you can't it's weird. Like you can't reinvent something, but at the same time, you can bring elements of what made it so special back. So it just comes back to your core values. What were these places about? They were about family. They're about food. They're about fun. They're about entertainment. You go with your heart, and like that's what made these places. You can't bring the people back because many of them aren't around anymore. But you can certainly have a lot of the core values and beliefs that these places stood on.
It's interesting. But so there's a debate of why there was a downfall of the Borscht Belt. Because to me, it seems very obvious.
Oh, yeah?
It just travel and
yeah. Well, I mean, the Civil Rights Act, lessening discrimination. I can see like that was like 64. So I can see that taking a while to like for people to really start implementing it. And then by that time, the airfare costs have dropped. And so it just all kind of comes together.
Yeah, they say the 3 A's. So assimilation, air conditioning, and air travel. Like those were the those were the things that kind of did it. Like that's, but it's really interesting because, that story has been recycled for the last 30 years. And it's almost like, okay, well, what are you trying to, are like, all right, that's what it was, but what's going on now? Like, stop and take a look at what's going on now. And see all the amazing things happening in Ulster and Sullivan County. Try and look forward, not backward.
No, I think that's so true that like at the end of the day, it's what are you doing now and what does the future hold for this place? Because I think it's optimistic. I think it's really cool. And I think it's definitely it's changing. It's not gonna be like Jewish hotels. I think Kutsher's got sold to what is it, like a meditation
They're
retreat?
Yoan Wellness Center, and I'm glad their prices have come down. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little horrified.
It looks really cool.
It's really nice. Yeah. It's just when 2 years ago, their prices were way more expensive than they are now. So their prices have come down significantly, and they must have heard me. No, I'm joking. They must have heard me. They're just like, okay, we got to shut her up.
I think that also that is a big, big change is that people are getting more into meditation. They're getting more into this kind of like, I know I am personally, I started meditating, going to like classes and stuff. Yeah. And I think it's going to be the new way, the new community.
Yeah. Wellness.
So that's a good thing. Yeah. Wellness. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really nice.
I think it's great too. Not everybody wants to go and eat like round the clock.
I do, but then I need to do some yoga.
It's so funny because I'm just like, I'm like, okay, so how do we adapt this into, our keto people and our gluten-free and our dairy-free? And can you imagine being a server in the dining room? Had they survived and they have to deal with all the people on their modified diets? Could you?
No peanuts allowed on the property.
No peanuts allowed on the property. Just, yeah, we're very more in tune to, well, most of us.
We're privileged. We're so privileged we can have this. Like back in the day, it's like you're allergic to peanuts. Good luck. You might not make it.
No. Oh my God. Yeah. Can you imagine? Jeez, I remember taking a peanut butter and jam sandwich to school. That's how old I am. Okay. Now, no, you can't do that.
I mean, I did that. And there was a girl in my grade who was allergic to peanuts, but she just had to fend for herself. Like,
that's horrible.
She's just like,
I know. And that's horrifying when you think about it now, right?
I mean, I think she couldn't eat it, but we were allowed to bring it. They really didn't give a shit. I think they just really didn't care about anything.
Well, it was just, there was definitely a more personal accountability back then. That's for sure. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. I think I want to cover some more of the hotels. So we did do a lot of Kutsher's and its history. And I think it's been around till 2008. What was it?
2013.
2013.
Yeah. 2013.
Okay. It's really a long time. And
it was the longest running one.
Yeah. And they were struggling for a while, and like the family kind of like, I don't know, there was drama there. It seemed like from the documentary.
Kutsher's drama?
Yeah.
What? Did you see us? I don't know. I mean, like every family has their stuff.
Oh no, you can just tell they weren't saying it, but there was like stuff the way they said things. They're like, yeah, I don't want to let it go, and everyone's like, you should really let it go. Like, I'm sure something underneath everything they said.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think I was just like, so full confession, I had rose-colored glasses on for most of this process. Like, they've slowly come down as I've talked to more family members. But there really, there really was a sense of, because these were families running them, there was the next generation. And then, being I don't know if I can't speak for, the Kutsher's family. I know that eventually it just got to the point where they saw the writing on the wall. Like they were one of the last people to close. And, I think,
I think it's hard. It's hard to accept, and
it's a hard. Well, and again, it goes back to like why, some people love talking about it. Some people, sold the hotel and didn't look back.
Yeah.
Because that was the end and it was time to move on. But what's really interesting is all the people who, did sell or they still look back on it with this fondness and love. Like it's not an appreciation for sure. I feel like the more you try and run from your roots, they kind of stay with you no matter.
Yeah.
So,
trauma.
Yeah, generational trauma. Yes. But yeah, I wouldn't say these hotels were really traumatic places, but
no, but that like, if you're not talking about what you went through or stuff like that, it definitely comes back with a vengeance, and you're at some point you're gonna have to face it,
big time, yeah.
But it's cool that still survived. I mean, like when we talk about hotel history, we're talking a lot about these hotels that have been around for 100 years. The fact that it's been around that long, it's like amazing. It's just, imagine having a business for that long. Like, people are lucky to have businesses for like 6 years, 2 years.
And not just a business like that, but a business where Mrs. Kutcher would greet people. You don't go, and we talked about this in the pre-interview, you don't go to a Hilton and see a Hilton greeting you there at the desk. That was the difference.
No. And maybe that's what some hotels are missing. Like the same people, maybe the owner can't be there, but to have like a consistency of workers that know the place, that have been there, that has a connection to it, I think that changes the way you feel about it. Because if you're getting just a new rotation of employees, like it's like, okay, you're almost like the guest, like just that was all the time.
Whenever we did our episode on the Chateau Marmont, that was part of what made people love it so much, was like Anne Little at the service desk for decades. It was it was seeing the same people every time they went.
Yeah, it was very much, and Phil Brown talks about it in his book, Catskills Culture. Like these places were and it comes back again to those core values. What were these?
The Catskills invented hospitality?
Most likely, yes.
Hey, yeah.
I think so.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, they kind of did. I mean, how you treat a guest, how you make them feel in your establishment. Yeah, it was,
but it was warm and personable. Like I feel like, okay, for example, the Plaza Hotel, we did an episode and I love the Plaza. They're very good at making you feel welcomed, but you're still like your privacy. It was like there's a barrier,
Boundaries. Boundaries are good.
Yeah. Boundaries are good. Boundaries are good. I'm not against boundaries, but like there's almost like it's not warm. I just feel like the sense when I watched about these hotels, there was like a warmth to it.
Yeah. There's very much a very like they knew what was going on in people's lives throughout the year, when they weren't at the hotel, because they'd be like, "Oh, Mrs. Kochberg, welcome back. How's your daughter? How's what's going on? Is your husband feeling better? I hear he had that." Like it's
more community.
It was a community, and people cared about.
Did care, but also like, did the Catskills start Airbnb? Kind of.
Well, so the thing that
I'm just bringing it all back. Like, it's OG.
The thing that makes me laugh is Airbnb stole from the Catskills, because the Catskills started with boarders.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Airbnb is basically the Catskills starting all over again.
Yeah,
because not everybody can afford. And like, I'm sorry, not everybody can afford the Plaza Hotel.
I can't.
From my trip,
go in there and use their bathroom.
For my trip to the Catskills, people are like, "Oh my God, why aren't you staying at blank hotel?" And I have to tell them, I can't afford it.
Yeah.
I'm staying at an Airbnb that's really cheap. It's in Sullivan County, and it's exactly what I need. And that's literally how people used to vacation back then. Not everybody could afford, 5-star accommodation. So they went to the bungalow colonies, right?
That's
same thing.
That's what I'm saying.
I know. So yeah. So I'm, that's what I always say, because people are like, there's no place to stay in the Catskills. There's no hotel. I'm like, there's a ton of Airbnbs. Where do you think they stayed in the 1900s when they were coming in and needing a place? They stayed as boarders.
Maybe that's what they need. They need to open a hotel and just make it an Airbnb.
And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 2 years, but no one's listening to me.
We support you. We back this up. Call Brian Chetsky, the CEO of Airbnb. Who's Jewish? Of course he is.
So there's so to its credit, like there are some really great hotels that have opened up. And like I try and promote them on the Borscht Belt Pod's like Instagram social, even though I can't personally afford to stay there. But I'll still promote them. But
that's what we do. We promote places we would never be able
to. Hey, but like that's the core value of the Borscht Belt. It's building other people up, building the people in your community. I mean, they're not really my community because I'm in Toronto, but do you know what I mean? That's the spirit of it.
It has no borders and boundaries anymore because of the internet.
Thank you.
Really? Yeah. So you are a part of that community. No, really.
I am. No, I am. I'm just like,
I think you feel like an outsider, and you should.
I do feel, you know what? I feel like an outsider because I've been told I'm an outsider. So that's why. And I've been a little triggered lately.
I'm sorry. You shouldn't.
It's okay. So yeah, Grossinger's was one of the most prominent hotels in the area. They were open from the early 20th century until they closed their doors in 1986. It was founded by Asher and his wife Malka, and they basically started as a small boarding house, and it gradually over the years became a grand hotel with hundreds of rooms and numerous amenities. So soon to be documented in the upcoming, yet to be titled documentary that is currently in production right now. So,
oh, great. I loved that their daughter Jennie was so in charge of so many things throughout the years. She was major girl boss.
She was she was she really was the, I don't want to say the mascot, but the face of Grossinger's. She was born in 1892 in the Austria-Hungary area, and then she emigrated to the US in the early 1900s. She was a pivotal role in the success of Grossinger's Hotel. She married Harry Grossinger in 1914, and together they transformed the hotel into what it was, this Heimische hotel that attracted a very diverse and affluent clientele. So
yeah, it was even I thought it was really cool that during World War II, she was majorly into raising money for the war bonds. So she raised over $1 million for war bonds, and she also sent care packages to any Grossinger's employees that were serving in the military.
Yeah, and Grossinger's by mail, I think.
Yeah, it was mail, canteen by mail, I think.
Or canteen, yeah.
And then the Air Force named a plane Grossinger in honor of them.
So cool. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she personally oversaw hotel operations, ensuring that every guest, received their exceptional service and comfort during their stay. And she cultivated this very Heimische, as there's that word again, atmosphere, and introduced just various innovations like the all-inclusive packages and sort of this expansive all-you-can-play recreation facility. So,
can we explain what Heimische means?
Heimische, yeah. So Heimische is a Yiddish word, basically meaning, I think, homey. Let me get the exact definition because I don't want to botch this.
it up. It's homey, but it's also specific to Ashkenazi Jewish culture. Homey.
Yeah. So Hamisha. So it's something familiar, everyday, homey. Often linked to just very cozy, unpretentious kind of way, a style.
Yeah, there's definitely a style with Hamisha stuff. Food.
Yeah.
It's like food. Think of Fogel.
Just warmth.
Yeah, so just something that's comforting, sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, familiar, and I can like food would definitely go with that, because what's more comforting and homey than the food that you've grown up eating? Yeah. Yeah. Well, and speaking of like the all inclusive, like she was all inclusive as far as people were concerned too. Like she wanted everybody to come to Grossinger's. She invited people like I think it was Jackie Robinson, the baseball player, to come stay there, and the UN diplomat Ralph Bunch. It says like she wanted everybody to come, and she was like, "We're not, we're not discriminating against anybody. We were discriminated against enough. Like everybody can come here."
Yeah, and I've seen Jews that fought for civil rights side by side, with Martin Luther King Jr. Like, it makes sense that this is all rooted in, again, the Borscht Belt.
Yeah.
Main thing. But yeah, it's I think that there's this idea of bonding and being strong together from an outsider point of view. And because of that, they don't want anyone to feel unwelcome. Like, that's a horrible feeling. And
and so that's also why she was just such a huge philanthropist too. Like, you mentioned sort of the war bonds, but she felt during the Depression like so many people were suffering, and that's why she always felt it was important to give back to not just Jewish causes but non-Jewish causes, which she was awarded 2 honorary degrees and a slew of awards in her honor,
which is really cool for a woman back in the day.
It's huge.
Yeah, and we see that sometimes actually in the hotel industry, that women had a role, a place there. Even with the Chateau Marmont, we mentioned how the person who started the hotel started as an apartment building, but he hired a woman lawyer, like, and a lot of women were in charge.
Yeah, well, they were the investors. Yeah, it was all women investors.
Yeah, but he took it seriously. I felt like that there's something about the hotels. Maybe it kind of makes it okay in a man's head, because it's like a really big house. And she's like a woman, so she'll know how to run it. But in a way, it's it's kind of cool that maybe that belief allowed women to really rise up and have important roles.
Yeah, I think it was just it's this natural sort of caretaker role, right? Like they were very much people who just wanted to take care, like be that mother figure almost in a way.
But there's also the business aspect, and you still have to be respected. Like, you can't just be, the schmata mama that everyone.
No. Oh yeah, for sure. But it was a balance. Yeah, which is why there was like a balance of both of them for sure. Like both of those worlds.
I'm shocked that Grossinger's closed down earlier than Kutsher's, and they closed in 1986.
So that's part of the struggle of like what happens when the next generations either don't want to keep it going, or they want, like I I think, I mean, it's a whole mess, just sort of what happened in terms of, selling. And then yeah, it's a sad thing, right? Because, you want to keep things on, but then, if you're a part of that family, you also have your own life you want to live.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of things were at play. Like they were really trying to get gambling into the area, which was not happening. So they didn't know what to do and how to keep it going and keep people interested if the state wasn't allowing gambling to come in.
Interesting. Oh, okay. So there's a lot of factors at play that caused, the downfall of the Borscht Belt. I wouldn't gambling. That's
yeah, gambling was like, if you talk to anybody, like any of the locals, like that's a huge reason, why people feel that. Some people think too, the ability to evolve with the times, to keep in the upkeep and to keep what people wanted. It's hard to look back to, I mean, again, it goes back to those opinions. Everybody has a different viewpoint of sort of what happened.
Yeah. And also to mention some of the other like public figures that have visited the Grossingers. I was surprised about this, but Eleanor Roosevelt, Cardinal Spellman, Nelson, Rockefeller, and Robert Kennedy. Those are
names. No, it was a mecca for the who's who from the time that they became popular to the time they closed in 1986. It was a place to be seen, to see people, and a place to be seen.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm really sad. I mean, I'm sad that all of this don't exist anymore. But when I was reading and listening to the podcast with Marissa Scheinfeld, she's the one that took the photography books, right? She's a photographer.
She's the one who's helped me, like, she inspired this podcast. It was,
I want to buy it. I mean, I have it in my Amazon cart, but like,
yeah, I have it right here.
Beautiful. Like, it's haunting.
It's here, sorry.
And I wish, honestly, there's a part I'm like, I wish I could have taken those photos.
Yeah, so do a lot of people. A lot of people.
They're so good.
But there is only one Marissa, and
no, she did it. It's good. It was her.
She was the first to capture it. And the reason why she did it so well is because there was a lot of heart to it. It wasn't just, like, it's interesting. Some people, I think, really had she got a lot of praise for it, but then other people could not there were a lot of people who didn't understand the photos, and she talks a little bit about that in the interview. But it wasn't meant to be exploitive. It was meant to show what was lost. It was kind of, look at what is left here. I mean, I don't know. I think it always comes down to intention. Her intention was not meant to offend anybody or hurt anybody. It's meant to show what these places meant to people.
Yeah, she's documenting history. I mean,
she's literally like that. Living history, and just many, anyways, it's honestly like,
we're trying to promote her book. Go buy it.
Yeah, no. She's literally like, she is your woman. Like, it just really, so much heart to it. And like, some of it, the photos are very, very sad. Like, I remember I told her in the first interview, when I interviewed her, I was like, I cried at some of these, because it's just, you know what these places were, and then to see them as they are in the present, even though a lot of them have now been torn down or they've burned down.
Yeah, a lot of them burned down.
A lot of them, yeah. Just really, it's literally holding the mirror up. She's holding the mirror up, saying, "Hey, like, look at these places. This is what they are now." And you know, I think it's hard for some people to see that.
It is. They are emotional photo. I didn't think I would be affected that much.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, oh, cool, old photos of these, you know, abandoned places. They move you. I can imagine how she felt being there.
Yeah, and like one of the things that I highlight in her book, like I highlight just because that I really respect is she said my role as a photographer was to see, observe, and record. I did not move or adjust anything. Many of these sites were in such chaotic state that all I needed to do was adjust myself and my camera angle in order to capture a dynamic variety of scenes. And she did.
Yeah, she didn't
and it's hard. It's very real, and it's very hard sometimes to sit in that realness.
Yeah,
for people.
I think a lot of what the Borscht Belt does, and a lot of just an example of these abandoned buildings, it, as you said, it takes a mirror up to so much, and it really no one wants to deal with death. It kind of reminds me of death.
Your own mortality, right?
Yeah.
And she talks about it like so the other thing about this book is you know, like she has these beautiful essays sprinkled among these photos, and like she talks about how you know, and again, this is literally like it was such an inspiration for my podcast because you know, she talks about this longing for, you know, the simplicity of the past, and at the same time excited about, she says, the commotion of what came after. And she talks about, and I quote her, and I always remind her whenever I talk to her about this, she mentions in her essay, you know, this concept of hope, growth, and possibility. And I always kind of remind her, I'm like, those are that's what triggered this podcast is hope, growth, and possibility. It's, you know, having a look at the past, but then looking forward. And yeah, so she's, I as you can tell, I have a lot of love and respect for her and her work.
Yeah, well, I see why.
Yeah.
We follow her, and I think
she's amazing, and she's like, and like I keep saying, like she's, you know, at its heart, she's the one who's gonna save the Borscht Belt. I don't know if she'll be able to make me my resort.
Well, I mean, I love that there's the idea of growth and possibility, because probably 2 years ago when you started this, there was no Borscht Belt Fest. There was no, you know, Borscht Belt
Don't tell
Museum.
them, they'll get angry.
So the growth and possibility are definitely
I'm literally
happening.
That Jewish mother who's like, don't worry about me, I'll just sit in the dark. Like literally.
Yeah. So I mean, it's wonderful that this book is very sad and painful, but look what it's sparking. Look what it's accomplishing.
But she didn't mean it to be like, but that's the thing, like, and that's where I think the Borscht Belt Markers Project comes in. Like she, you know, it's taking the next step, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, so this was it. And, you know, as an artist, I'm sure she could attest. Again, you gotta interview her. Marissa's an expert on Marissa. But she, like you evolve, right? As you learn and take in more. And I think for her, you know, she's making the Borscht Belt like such a huge part of her.
Stay tuned for part 3 of the Borscht Belt, where we'll continue digging into its history and the major hotels of the era. In the meantime, you can get more Catskills content by listening to Jen's podcast, The Borscht Belt Tattler, and by following at Borscht Belt Pod, at Borscht Belt Museum, and at Borscht Belt Historical Markers on Instagram. For a historical dive on the region, visit catskillsinstitute.northeastern.edu. We've curated a variety of books on this subject, both fiction and nonfiction, that you can find at bookshop.org/shop/hotel history, including the photography book mentioned in this episode, The Borscht Belt, Revisiting the Remains of America's Jewish Vacation Land by Marissa Scheinfeld. You can also find books about other hotels we featured on the podcast. We do receive a small commission on any books you buy at no additional cost to you, so go crazy. You can also follow us on social media for lots more content. Find us on Instagram and Threads at Hotel History Podcast, on TikTok at Hotel History, and sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/Hotel History. Please subscribe to our recently launched newsletter, The Check-In, at tcheckin.substack.com for curated news and articles on travel, culture, events, and, of course, hotels. Our current issue is all about the Catskills, including lots of stuff we couldn't fit into the podcast episodes, so check it out.